Okay, uh, today we're gonna looking for some data from the World Bank. So here is we search for World Development Indicator as we use this as our database, and we choose the database is World Development Indicators and the countries. We are adding 10 ASEAN countries, which are uh, including ASEAN 6 and also ASEAN 4. We have Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Brunei, and Singapore as our ASEAN 6. And also we have CLMV as our ASEAN 4, which are Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam. And then after we have the countries, we put the series, which are our variable, and we choose GDP growth annual and also population growth annual. Okay, next after the series, we choose time. It is 10 years time series, so we include year from 2012 until 2021. Here is the data, so we download in Excel. After it was downloaded, then here is the data. We make it bigger so it clear. And then after that, we want to sort the variable, so it is grouped in GDP growth and also in population growth. And then for making the graph, we are making another data. We make the average actually in time series from 2012 until 2021, and we are grouping ASEAN 6 and also ASEAN 4 as the subject. And first we are making the data for GDP growth. First one we use the formula is equals average, and then we include data for 2012 for ASEAN 6, and then we have the average, which is 5.16, and then for ASEAN 4 we also doing the same thing, use the same formula and add input some data which are for the 4 ASEAN countries, which are CLMV. And we make it simple, we drag it until 2021, so the same formula applied. And then after the data was made, and then we can create the graph. Here is the graph, so Nanda will explain the graph. Next, we are making data for the population growth. in the same time series from 2012 until 2021, 10 years frame, and we use the same formula, which is equals average, and we input the data for ASEAN 6 first. And here is the average for ASEAN 6 in 2012, 1.5. And then we also formulate the data for ASEAN 4, which is 1.1, and then we drag it also to make it simple, and then we have the data, so then we create the graph. And here is the graph for the population growth average in ASEAN with comparing ASEAN 6 and ASEAN 4. And the explanation will continue by Nanda.
Next, the chart illustrates the average population growth of two groups of countries in the ASEAN region. There are two, ASEAN 4 and ASEAN 6 countries, from 2012 to 2021. The bars in the chart represents the average population growth rates for each year, with the ASEAN 4 countries represent in the red and the ASEAN 6 countries represent in blue. From 2012 to 2021, the chart shows that the ASEAN 4 countries had a more stable average population growth rate than the ASEAN 6 countries. The ASEAN 6 countries tend to experience a decline in population growth from 2012, with a slight decrease in 2017. In contrast, the ASEAN 4 countries' population growth rate remained relatively steady throughout this period. The pandemic had an extreme impact on reducing the average population growth in 2019 to 2021 for the ASEAN 6 countries, whereas the ASEAN 4 countries did not experience a significant impact. The decline in population growth in the ASEAN 6 countries during the pandemic may be attributed to various factors such as reduced immigration, lower birth rates, and maybe higher mortality rates. The chart illustrates the average GDP growth of two groups of countries in the ASEAN region. There are two groups, ASEAN 4 and ASEAN 6 countries, from the year 2012 to 2021. The bars in the chart represent the average GDP growth rate for each year, with the ASEAN 4 countries represent in red and the ASEAN 6 country represent in blue. From 2012 to 2020, the chart shows that the ASEAN 4 countries had a higher average GDP growth rate than the ASEAN 6 countries. However, in 2021, the trend changed as the ASEAN 6 countries were able to bounce back from the pandemic's negative impact and exceed the ASEAN 4 countries in terms of GDP growth. It is interesting to note that the pandemic had a negative impact on both the ASEAN and ASEAN 6 countries, both sides, but the ASEAN 6 countries were able to recover faster and more effectively than the ASEAN 4 countries. This may be attributed to various factors such as better economic policies, more good healthcare system, or more diversified economy.